tribulations, my heart, my balls, my somebody stop me, somebody come and get me. Little did I know that the Lord was riding with me. The dark, the light, my heart, the fight, the wrong, the right is gone.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another JVS movie review. Today we are bringing you, which will possibly be my last review of the year, at least the last film I see review. You might see more reviews after this one for things that I just haven't dropped reviews for yet. But my last new film of the year, and this one is, and we're going to get into this title, Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. And here is the quick synopsis: a joyous, emotional, heartbreaking celebration of the life and music of Whitney Houston, starring Naomi Ackie as Whitney Houston, Stanley Tucci as Clive Davis, Alton Sanders as Bobby Brown, Tamara Tucci as Cicely Houston, who is also one of my favorite actors from Law & Order, Nefri Williams as Robin Crawford, again, one of my favorite actresses from Black Lightning, and then Clark Peters as John Houston. So, first thing I'm going to say is Sony, who I think this is a Sony picture. The name of this movie has been a controversy because they decided at the end to put Whitney Houston's name in the front of this movie because they assumed that no one knew that something called I Want to Dance with Somebody would be about Whitney Houston. First, I Want to Dance with Somebody is a horrible title for a movie. Two, adding Whitney Houston's name at the beginning of it is a horrible title for a movie. It shows no faith in the studio that you couldn't even get the name right for this movie. This movie could have been named just Whitney Houston, Miss Houston, The Voice, anything else. I don't know why they picked I Want to Dance with Somebody, which is a great song, a hit to any person who will ever hear it. I still don't understand why you would name the movie I Want to Dance with Somebody. It makes no sense. This is before I get into the review of the actual movie here. This tends to be the problem with this movie, and even down to the release of this movie, which, I mean, unless I'm blind, I've seen no clear marketing for this movie. I've seen nothing for this movie. We are in an award season period, and this movie releases at the end when anything else has come out. Most critics have done their top 10 lists, and then we get I Want to Dance with Somebody, a movie that should have been front and center. This is a movie about the greatest voice of all time, and it feels like it was an afterthought. And that is a problem, along with, again, a horrible title to this movie. But I digress. Beyond that, I will say this is, before I even fully get into the movie, this is the best music biopic that I saw this year. This is better than Elvis to me, despite its flaws. And Elvis had huge flaws. This one has flaws, but just not as bad as Elvis. So the film opens up at a pinnacle point of Whitney Houston's career, as it shows the beginning of her 1994 performance at the American Music Awards. If you're too young, I understand you wouldn't know what that performance was, but I was close to a teenager at the time of that performance, so I understand that this performance signified why Whitney Houston is the greatest voice possibly ever. It is that type of performance that I believe is on YouTube. So if you don't see it, you can check it out on YouTube so you can understand just how great this performance is. But they opened up with that performance, and then they backtracked through Whitney Houston's life. Naomi Ackie is amazing in this movie. That's the best way to put it. She, as Whitney Houston, she embodies Whitney Houston. Her mannerisms are like Whitney Houston. Her voice, her inflections are Whitney Houston. Everything she does, you believe she's Whitney Houston in the film, and it works. And I understand that it was a gripe that she doesn't actually look like Whitney Houston, but that's perfectly fine. I mean, all I need you to do is, as long as your mannerisms and your inflections match the character, and and you're able to pull off the emotions necessary to pull off a character like this, I will believe that's the most important part of this. It's not necessarily looking like Whitney Houston. I mean, anyone who saw Bohemian Rhapsody should fully understand why that's not a big thing about looking identical to the person, but it's about embodying the person, and she does an amazing job here of embodying Whitney Houston. Now, Nefri Williams, who plays Robin Crawford, I believe she's the best of the supporting cast in this film. The problem is it feels like that storyline between Robin and Whitney is not as explored as one would like to see in this film. It's one of the flaws of this film, and it's an ongoing flaw in the film, but then as you think about it, I kind of fully understand it. None of the supporting characters seem to get the necessary screen time for you to overly care about these characters, but also you had to remember this is a biopic of Whitney Houston, who lived an amazing life, and there's so much story about Whitney Houston to be told that unfortunately these characters do have to play the background. And unfortunately, Robin character really does play the background, even though Nefri, she does an amazing job as Robin. She's the best of the people in this supporting cast. I just wish I could have seen more of that relationship, more of how it grew from the love, like, couple relationship they had to that change where it was a situation where Whitney understood, if I need to be accepted, I can't be this way. I give the filmmakers and everyone humanly possible involved behind the scenes a heck of a lot of credit for even showing this, because normally we get glossed over the biopics of people, and this one here, they touched on a lot of subjects with Whitney Houston, and as someone who knew them, I greatly appreciated it. Like, this caught me all out of left field that they even discussed Robin in this way, and they decided to lean into the point that they actually loved each other, that they had a relationship, that they were in love with each other. It's one of the credits that this film definitely gets over other films that I've seen this year. But as a whole, as you just go through the life of Whitney Houston, at times it feels like it's rushed along. We do get Stanley Tucci, who plays Clive Davis. I just feel he was not given enough to play Clive. And when they try to throw bits and pieces in there, it just feels so rushed that it comes across as an afterthought. And besides Whitney Houston, Clive Davis is possibly the person in this story that deserves the most respect, because anyone who knows anything about music, you know Clive Davis and you understand what he has done, and you have an amazing actor like Stanley Tucci playing him. You would expect them to lean more into it. They don't necessarily lean more into it, and it kind of leaves a little bit of gape in there. It's not a big problem, but it's enough of a problem to bring up that can detract people from seeing this movie. The only other issue, because there's not really much of a storyline, they attempt to go in chronological order about what's happening here. That is a entire flaw of this film. At times, it feels like they're skipping along and they're attempting to give you a piece, an emotional set piece based off of a song. And while that can work in certain films, here it just feels so unnecessarily rushed at times, where you want to stay with the moment, stay with the big songs, stay with the songs that everyone knows, and explain how these came to fruition, or explain how once Whitney accepted these songs, what was next. And you don't necessarily get that because it feels like it's rushed from, like, it's a ongoing theme of the film where Clive and Whitney meet at his office, and he plays songs, and Whitney tells him if she likes them or she hates them. But then it got to the point where he only played the hits, only songs that Whitney Houston liked. And it just didn't seem to give the gravitas to the situation, the gravitas to the years of everything that was happening in those moments. because it just felt so rushed along. And that is the biggest problem with this film. But that's the biggest problem with a lot of music docs, is that if you are not willing to focus on a strict time period and you tend to attempt to do an overarching arc of their story, you're going to leave out so much. Or if you don't leave out so much, you're going to rush past a lot of it. Here, a lot of it feels rushed past, but Naomi brings you in because her performance as Whitney is just so great. It tends to still captivate you, even when the story fails you. Alton Sanders, who plays the other huge character that most people are going to know in this film, Bobby Brown. I don't want to say he was miscast as Bobby Brown, but it comes across that way. It came across as him cosplaying as Bobby Brown. I just don't think he was the right person for this role. I don't mind the amount of screen time they gave Bobby Brown because this is a Whitney Houston doc. This is not a Bobby Brown doc, so I don't mind that at all. It's just that Naomi is such a force in this film that at times when they're on screen with each other, it's like he withers to the force that she is. And withering has never been a quality of Bobby Brown. So it just kind of throws you off a little bit. And even when you talk about their marriage, their love story, it feels rushed along with everything else in this film. Like rushed along with certain key songs that, again, that is something that they really should have done. If you just key in on certain songs, Whitney has a massive catalog. But if you key in on certain songs that will give you the story, give you everything you need to show on screen, I think it would have came across better. They, in one particular scene, and this is not a spoiler, I just want to bring it up because, again, it's a doc pick, so you kind of know how it's going to move. On one particular scene, we get Clive playing It's Not Right, But It's Okay for Whitney, which is one of her later hits, like possibly off the last big album that she had. And when they play it, and when we get the video treatment of it, and we get everything, it doesn't stick with that moment enough for us to understand everything that Whitney Houston was going through when she picked that song, how that album moved. Like, none of that is displayed, and it's kind of questionable why they did it. Even early on in the film, we get a point where interviewer asks her about her not making black music, which was a huge criticism of Whitney Houston. It was that she made pop music and not necessarily black music. And I would have loved to stick with that moment even more to explain to us the mental anguish that brought upon Whitney Houston, that people would think that about her. Like, it's certain things you just wanted them to stick with the moment a little longer, and they didn't. But whenever they gave you a moment, Naomi knocked it out the park. She's amazing in this movie as Whitney Houston. Beyond the flaws of the film, she's amazing. And that should be enough for people to see it. Unfortunately, it's like this film is stuck behind a studio that didn't know what to do with it. And as much as someone who reviews films and we see them and we understand like the mechanics behind the scenes of how films work, this is a huge biopic. I'm just utterly confused how they dropped the ball so much on this biopic, down to a horrible title for a film that makes no sense. But nonetheless, the actors do an admirable job in this film. And I say that because Naomi as Whitney, she is amazing in this film. She is the key, the pinnacle of it. Everyone else, I don't think they gave enough to the supporting characters, but I didn't mind that at the end because it still is a Whitney Houston biopic. So, horrible title again here. Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Brought to you by Sony Pictures. This releases December the 23rd, so it comes out this upcoming Friday. Out of a possible 10, I'm going to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. This is the best musical biopic this year. And I know, I'm pretty sure people are going to disagree with me. But Naomi's performance is immaculate in this film. It is great. Just to hear those Whitney Houston songs even in the flaws of them putting them out of order at times, which is funny to me, or like just not giving you the full story on how certain songs came to fruition. Perfectly fine here. But her performance is great. Her performance is something I think that people should see. I think people are going to absolutely love. It is a feel-good movie, but it is a musical biopic about Whitney Houston that shows everything. And if anyone knows about Whitney Houston, you should know what I mean by everything. This movie shows everything. So there's nothing left out. And I think for that reason alone, audiences will appreciate this film and rather enjoy this film while you're watching it. Again, the musical numbers in it are enough to keep anyone who knows Whitney's music, who loves Whitney music, is going to keep you enthralled in the film and everything that happens. So check it out when it drops. Let us know what you think. This has been another JVS movie review. Peace, people.